this is how we go about hand scraping floors. And just for the past history of how hand scraping actually came out is that back 200-300 years ago, back when they started doing wood floors, there wasn't power things to be able to do it with. So everything was done by hand. Most of the stuff started in Europe, and they would cut the trees down, they'd chisel it, then they'd get it in there, and they would try to plane it to get it leveled off. Well, as you start to do the planing to level things off, you're not getting 100% perfect. But they would get done. That was a pretty expensive process to have it be done in Europe. Whereas today, now what they're doing is that they brought it back over to the United States, and as they did that, now there's abundance of trees, and everybody went to the, if you will, to the back 40, cut their own trees down, and brought the wood up, and then they would bring it into the house. So back 200 years in the U.S., it started to become cheaper and cheaper to be able to do that. So eventually power machines came along, we started sanding, we had planers, molders, all of those types of things to make the floors nice and flat. But of course today's day and age has replicated everything backwards. Now everybody's going back to how do I make this look real and authentic to the way that it was back 200 years ago. So we started going back into that thing and how do we do that? Now about 20 years ago down in Chicago, a company by the name of Berger Jewell started doing this, kind of doing it by hand and showing a bunch of different people how to do this. So he would go out to a person's house and he would go out and scrape these floors, and all of a sudden it started picking up as a craze. So everything that's done from a custom standpoint is kind of cool. And what the pre-finish company started to do is say, hey, how can I replicate this look? So some of the pre-finish companies today started to go, hey, how are we going to do this? One thing that they'll do is they'll go out to the local prisons and they'll get people to actually scrape for them in a prison. Some of the people use Amish people to come out and do hand scraping. And then what they do is they run it through the factory and they put all their finishes on it. There are some artisans that are out there that truly take a look at this and try to go, how can I create this with how a floor may wear? So something a little bit more of a distressed look. Not propping up, you kind of leave it not up because that's not going to wear down as much as the wood around it. So as all this craze started picking up, we said, hey, we want to get in on this craze. How do we do it? So we started with a few of our guys doing some of the scraping. We currently have we hired an Amish gentleman that lives about 30 minutes from where we get most of our flooring from that'll actually create this scrape. So, but before we did that with the Amish guys, we had our craftsman here, Tom, to do scraping. So this is what we do, and we're going to scrape some floors. So maybe we got 100 feet or 200 square feet of flooring, and we want to get it scraped. This is how we would go about doing it. So as you can see in the back there, there's many skids of flooring. We may be scraping up to 1,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet of flooring, and creating this textured look. Every one of these is slightly different, and what we found is that day 1 scrape is maybe slightly different than day 3 scrape. Because as you watch Tom do the scraping here, you can realize how hard this actually is to do. So I do it, but my shoulders pull on, and I kind of have a little bit more strength to do it. So we're going to show what we're going to do here. This is how we typically scrape. So
that looks like scrape the edges first, just to get it nice and rounded out. Scrape. You can see tatters like that. When you cross grain, it'll chip over like big chunks of the edge, so you just make it soft.
30-some years ago, maybe 40-some years ago, when I learned how to sand floors, this was called bad sanding. Today, this is something we upcharge for. So, as you take a look at this is something that if you take a look at how he scraped it, it's going to create these little chatter things that are going on to that floor. And each of the bevel edges are doing that. So, right. So what we'll find as we do this, we'll scrape a bunch of different boards, we put them all together, and everybody goes, well, there's no scrape to it. Where's my scrape? Where did it go? Because it doesn't look like much as you're taking a look at raw material. But as that floor gets done, then it's all really pops out. So that's one board. Out of each bundle there is probably 30 boards per se, times, and each of those ones have about 20 square feet. So how much do you get done in a day? About 200.
Yeah, I'm pretty great at that.
Not enough.
I get done 3 boards a day. So when I'm doing it, it's just a little bit more of a, got it done and that's the way it goes today. So this is, one type of a scrape, but we're trying to really create a deeper scrape. We're going to do this more of a base scrape. Most of the people like the little bit heavier chatter to it that are going on. So. Yeah, once we get it to this point, what we do is we actually put sand into this. So all these little chips that are showing up like that, we actually do that. So this one's a little bit more of a full face scrape. And what we're trying to do there is just not create so much of these deeper chatters, just kind of scrape the whole face of the every piece is different. So something like this, since this hickory, it's the hardest and messy wood that we deal with. There we find that that's a harder floor to scrape. Something like an oak floor, those scrape a lot easier. When we stop get the cherry or walnut, then you really gotta watch how deep we're actually scraping. Most people like the hickory floor, which are the hardwoods, and that's a lot of times where we're actually scraping. So this here is a picture of how they did it back in the old days when we got it into the floor. That's how they would actually go about finishing off the entire floor. So every time that my guys complain, I show them this picture saying, hey, it's not quite as hard as it is back then. So then they would scrape it to get it level with the board. And we actually, like I said, we did for a while, we were doing quite a bit of it in-house, but now that we found that he does a fantastic job with it. And these tools that we have here are really, really high-end for what he uses. He's got a pipe with a blade on it. So it's like a milk pipe or a water pipe that he's using to scrape with. This is primitive. Yes. And it's very simplified. He comes in and he'll do this whole thing and he doesn't say a word all day. He loves to scrape floors. Not our age. So just a little bit different, subtle look, subtle scrape to it. Here you don't see it quite as much. There is a little bit of still a little bit of that chipping chattering going on. If you actually take a look in our showroom, we have 2 different types of scrapes out there. One is what we call time worn, where we're doing this, and the other one is hand scope. And that's where we're really trying to dig in and create that deeper, bigger scrape to it. So. On occasion, our groups will say, hey, we really want to distress the floor versus scraping it. That is, now we're to the high-tech tools that we have here. So each of these things are creating a different type of thing. So as we do that, when we get all said and done, we take out the really high-tech stuff and we beat it up with the chain. Well, we did this in a contract, and we had it all beat up like that. He said, that's not enough. And he went out and he got a big old sledgehammer and he was just pounding on it. Now this is how you distress on floor. So sometimes you'll hear in the marketplace where you hear hand scraped or distressed. We've separated the two. This last technique that we're doing is more of a distressing, whereas the other one is more of a hand scrape. This is final, what the final product will look like when we get all set and done. You can see that the scrape is in there. The cool part about what you're able to do with this is that on a lot of the pre-finished floors that are out there, it is what you see what you get. So if you want a hand scraped floor, you're getting their 4 colors, their 4 looks. Whereas here, you said, no, give us with a color. Give us whatever wood you like. So it's a highly customizable thing to be able to go about making it whatever you like. It can collect some dust. You know, usually with this we're going to recommend vacuuming it. So, and we've also done things where we've had customers say, I don't want it edge. So then we do a thing called pissing the edge, where we just take the edge of it and we're just taking it and knocking that little bit of that edge down to it bounce up. Any questions about anything? We can distress it a little bit harder with the scraping. Do that when we can. Go back to this technique. This is what they were doing back in there, keeping the floor flat and trying to level it off and scrape it off. My guys told me if they ever have to do that on the floor, they're like, what? Because here, he's able to stand. And you know, all that kind of that pressure when you're on the ground trying to do that, a little bit more of a challenge. So you're not going to get anywhere near as deep when we do that, but we can't scrape it. It's just not as deep. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.